psychologically. It's pathological, of course, of what motivates the rapist to commit the crime. And for serial rapists, for kind of episodic serial offenders, sexual offenders, it's the whole neurological structure, the whole architecture, psychologically, of that kind of offense is very much like the psychological architecture of an addict, where you've got all the phases of addiction that the addict walks through: the longing, the high right before the event, the contemplation of the event itself, the hopelessness and frustration after the completion of the event. Serial killers are morbid people. Ted Bundy told us about that. I mean, he described being morbid at the end of a crime. And this is for the book Riverman that I did with Bob Keppel. And,
great book.
Yeah, oh, thanks. And so you've got that whole arc. And so when you talk about the whole notion, the idea that it is a tantric exercise of power, it's a fascinating look at just what the belief in the Tantra holds for people who are seeking power. Well,
when you discuss the sexual offenders and the episodic serial rapists, you're talking about from my point of view, you're talking about the foot soldiers of the group, whatever this group might be. I think when you're talking about addiction, there are people who can supply the addiction, the pushers, whether it's a drug or whether it's a stable of underage children. For instance, in the whole Franklin scandal story, and all the things that swirl around that story, all the connections with government people and with police, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that you have people who are willing to exploit these addictions for their own ends, whether it's for blackmail purposes or for anything else. And I think that the people who are in thrall to these addictions are not as powerful as the people who are supplying them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm wondering about, because your roots of, and you're right, this is more than a conspiracy. It's almost like an ongoing, it's like the old Sherlock Holmes, there's trouble afoot.
But it also might explain Limbaugh's actions. He's in the service to somebody.
Well, yeah, but that,
I mean, we know he's an addict. It's already been, it's part of,
right.
the public record.
I mean, he was charged with acquiring pills. But one of the things that, so when you look at this ongoing cabal, this group, which really has its roots going back, I think, more than 100 years, what do you think they know? And because they is very elusive. But what do you think they know that we don't?
Okay, that's a pretty good question. Well, of course, they know the Manson secret. They know how to make that work. But that's technology. I mean, that's just the tools, the methods. They have to know something else. I mean, there has to be some kind of reason behind all of this, some kind of structure for why they're going about this in such a way, risking disclosure, actually. So are they doing this because they are, by their very nature, not quite the same as the rest of us, which is, kind of a paranoid way of looking at it, or a sort of David Icke-ish way of looking at it? Or is there really something more to it? Did the X-Files come close, to solving that issue by saying that there was some darker secret at the heart of it, which everyone's struggling to protect on the one hand and exploit on the other? I was asked that question, I think, in Amsterdam for that space science conference, where people were saying, what is it? Is there some sort of dark, secret, some dark heart at behind all of this? And if you meet these people, and on occasion I've met people that seem to me to be very much involved in this. If you meet them, their frame of reference is not the same as ours. I'm not talking about serial killers again, which to me are the foot soldiers, the people who've been manipulated, the people who've been conditioned into doing what they do. But the people who are behind it seem to me to be people who do not look at human values the way we do.
Well, and like Mitt Romney.
Excuse me?
That like Mitt Romney, the presidential hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't seem connected. He doesn't seem to be one of us.
Yeah,
he
I
doesn't
can
seem.
yeah.
No.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Peter.
But just using Mitt Romney. I mean, anybody watching him is very frustrated that he can't seem to get anything right. He can't react to people in normal ways because he's out of his element. And I think that's a good example of how you can meet someone whose mindset is just not in the world's best interest. Let's just say.
But
Well, there's a lack of affect also. There's a kind of weird way of when you're dealing with people like that, they don't really seem to be connecting even with you on a one-to-one basis.
Right.
You know, they seem to be someplace else.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that's where he is. I mean, but, so I've met people. In fact, I'm going to be speaking at the Long Island Spy Museum in April, where I'm talking about an American historical spy thing, OSS stuff, but not UFOs because of all the CIA folks that are there. It's a taboo subject. But,
Sure.
I had to ask some questions. But when you talk, there seems to be, and these are not just even the foot soldiers, as you described them, which I think is a correct description. Even the foot soldiers seem to be aware of something bigger, but even more aware that they better not go near it because they themselves will be forfeit if it's suspected that they're trying to get near some secret. And it's...
Well, are you talking about the end of the world and we're all going to be stuck here?
Well, I just keep thinking, and this is what I wanted to ask Peter about, it is that we know now, and statisticians such as they are and population scientists have known ever since the 19th century that there will come a point when planet Earth will irrevocably be unsustainable for human life. It's not a fear. It's not a conspiracy. It's not some, you guys are like UFO wingnuts in tin hats. It's nothing like that. It is an absolute mathematical fact that at 10 billion people, we're at 7 billion now, at 10 billion people, the Earth will not work. It just won't work anymore. So if you were among the power elite, if you were a royal family, if you were Bank of England, if you were Federal Reserve, if you were, you name it, if you were, okay? If you were, would you be speculating from generation to generation as the population grew? You'd be experimenting, because this leads us to the 9, but you'd be looking at ways, okay, what would be the easiest way to forestall this moment of irrevocability when human life can no longer exist? Well, obviously, there are two things you would do that you could always do.
Prince Philip's idea.
Prince Philip's idea, which is what?
To eradicate 80% of the population.
Yes. That's one way to do it.
Or the Nazis.
Or the Nazis. Or get off the planet, which is Stephen Hawking's idea. So, I mean, here you are with really two, or get under the planet while you wipe out the population. So you have weather control. So you have AIDS. So you have all kinds of viruses. So you have a selective use of nuclear weapons. I could go on and on.
But if they went underground, what would they do for entertainment? And when you think about that, that's a huge, huge thing. Because I'm thinking, if it's over, there's no more reality TV. There's really no more...
They probably count their money.
No, but I'm serious. I mean, I think this is part of what they hadn't thought of.
Well,
because we may be lame up here on the planet, but we are entertaining. And I think that's probably our function.
Well, the greatest reality show you can imagine would be watching life get extinguished on the surface while they happily sit and just have their nestlings underground.
Yeah.
Sitting under the Denver airport. Anyway, that's kind of what I was thinking. And, if you take a lot of what you've been talking about, sinister forces, what the Nazis were up to, among a lot of other things, and I agree with you about Blavatsky and the whole, how that all came from. But if you look at that, might there be a time beyond time, some end to this that those folks know that we're unaware of? And if so, that's the plan.
Well, again, that was one of the questions that came up last year in Amsterdam, and it's a question that people are very concerned about right now because we have a lot of countries that are developing their own space programs, and no one really seems to know why they're throwing so much money into space programs. We have political leaders in our own country starting to talk once again about going to Mars or going to the moon or something like that, just throwing it out there as a suggestion. And we have private companies building their own space shuttles at this point. And one of the things I told them, that I told people who questioned me about this, I said, go, do the math. Once these ships or whatever they are, once they manage to leave the planet, who do you think is going to be on those ships? Just look at it from that point of view. If you're in charge of the money and you're in charge of the technology, you're not going to be looking out for the best interests of the people in general because you couldn't possibly hope to move 10 billion people off planet. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you just don't have that much, rocket technology on Earth to do it according to our old technology that we have now. It's just not going to happen. And where are you going to go with 10 billion people?
And we don't feed starving people now, so why would we scoop them up?
Exactly. So if there is a secret space program, my response was, well, why wouldn't there be a secret space program? Why not? I mean, we've kept the Manhattan Project was kept quite secret for so long. We've had a lot of secret projects. The old argument that, well, we can't really keep a secret, it eventually would come out. I don't believe that. I think that if something is really that important, the secrets are kept. I think that if something is really important, if there's a danger of a whistleblower, well, the whistleblower is taken care of.
That's right.
I'm not trying to be paranoid. I'm just being pragmatic.
No, you are. And you mentioned Morris K. Jessup and his
Sure.
untimely end, and why that suicide absolutely makes no sense forensically. How did the guy wind up with an exhaust hose taped into his mouth? I mean, if you're going to do something, at least be quicker. We know about a McDonald, the professor at University of Arizona. We know he made 2 suicide attempts because his wife told him. I have my own conspiracy theory about this. His wife tells him, here's a guy who testifies before Congress that it's not swamp gas, these things are real, he's done the investigation, and his investigation was phenomenally rigorous. You follow his investigation of the Rex Heflin UFO photos in the 1960s, and you see how rigorous and how skeptical a guy he was, right? But then he's going to the Soviet consulate at the United Nations, trying to find out what they know. His wife is hosting, because I interviewed her, she was hosting Black Panthers during Nixon's COINTELPRO, right, in the late 60s, early 70s. Sure. Black Panthers are in the house. So you've got J. Edgar Hoover giving a jaundiced eye, such as it was in 1971, because this guy was pretty old. You've got the whole Nixon administration looking at this. Why is this scientist talking to the Soviets? Why is his wife hosting members of the Black Panther Party? And so a nice surreptitious break-in to read McDonald's diary, and you read about his ideations of suicide. The guy was suicidal. He wrote it in his diary. So what do you think is a great way? You insert someone into one of his wife's Communist Party, Socialist Party meetings. A real kind of winsome guy, woos her, she falls in love, lets McDonald know, you're a nice guy, but you're too depressing. I'm out of here. We're getting a divorce, right? He tries suicide, but the guy can't shoot a gun. He blows his optic nerves out. So now he's walking around blind. She has a lot of pity, right? She says, okay, fine, forget the divorce. The guy is still wooing her. Finally, he does it right in California and takes his own life. They've gotten rid of McDonald. Then the guy who's in the Socialist Party splits on McDonald's widow. Mysterious for somebody who married her. And you get rid of McDonald. Elaborate, but it's a suicide. Morris K. Jessup, a suicide. Gray Barker, okay, so you look at all these people, and then you look at the Kennedy assassination. And
sure.
If there is a group, and look at the Bobby Kennedy assassination, and you look